this music here in a second because I don't have the rights to this music. I just had it playing in the background for a second. But hello. Good afternoon on this very cold Wednesday afternoon. Driving into the sun, heading westbound in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I wanted to talk a little bit about tyranny. All right? And here it is, just 2 days ago, on the day that we celebrate the birth of Martin Luther King Jr., who I personally don't hold in as high esteem as that which I hold someone else, to me, a much greater civil rights leader, a much greater leader, and that's that dude. You know, my term of endearment is to refer to someone, my term of endearment and respect is to refer to someone as that dude. And in American history, there's no one who is more of that dude, specifically no other black person who's more of that dude than Booker T. Washington. So those of you who know me, who are familiar with me, you know that I'm going to bring up his name often. And it makes me feel good to know that people, as a result of me continually bringing him up, have done their own research, and many of them have come to the exact same conclusion that I have come to, that Booker T. Washington is that dude, that he actually is the greatest black American that this nation has ever produced, and easily one of the top 10, probably one of the top 5 Americans that this nation has ever produced in terms of what they added to this nation. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. Just got all sidetracked by that, based on the fact that we're talking about an event that took place on Monday, and thinking about the fact that this nation has chosen to honor Martin Luther King on the National Mall, and it's not about putting Martin Luther King down. Once again, I have my own feelings about him. I just know that if you studied like I've studied, and you're a logical person, you'll come to the only logical conclusion that at the very least, Booker T. Washington should also have a spot on the National Mall and have his birthday, or whatever we choose, because he didn't know his actual birth date, but we should have his birth or his life be celebrated as a national holiday. But anyway, we're talking about tyranny. The tyranny that caused tens of thousands of Virginians to descend upon the Capitol grounds in Richmond, Virginia on Monday, the 20th of January. Was that the 20th? I think it was the 20th, but on Monday, this past Monday. And they were there, people of all stripe, people of all ethnicity, men and women, there to exercise their right to peacefully assemble. They're utilizing their First Amendment protected right to free speech, and using their Second Amendment right just in case the first one doesn't work out. Listen, Dave Chappelle is funny to me. He's a. If you're not familiar with why I use that particular quote, Dave Chappelle, who is a renowned comedian, accepted the Mark Twain Award at the Kennedy Center a couple of weeks back, and accepted the Mark Twain Award for recognition of his career, 20 plus years, 30, actually going on 30 years. Oh, no, 20, it's over 20 anyway. It's over 20 years in comedy, right? And so he was being recognized at the Kennedy Center here in the D.C. area, in Washington, D.C., received the Mark Twain Award in recognition of his contributions to comedy. And during his acceptance speech, one of the things he talked about was like, hey, these are just jokes. What we do, are jokes. He said, but it's the most honest genre that there is, right? Because truth is often told during jokes. But he said, hey, we're exercising our First Amendment rights, but never forget that the Second Amendment is there just in case the First Amendment doesn't work out. And that's one of the things that we're dealing with, right? I mean, when you look at what's taking place within the Commonwealth of Virginia, and don't get it twisted, what is taking place within the Commonwealth of Virginia just happens to be spotlighted. Trust and believe it's taking place in your state also, right? We pointed out, I pointed out this story that about a year, as a matter of fact, about a year and a half, going on 2 years now, but back in 2017, when the current Attorney General for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was elected. Now, once again, I didn't follow Pennsylvania politics specifically because I don't reside within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So at that point, I did not have a need to follow what was taking place politically, who the candidates were in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Let's just be honest. I mean, there's 50 different states that we have, as well as the other territories. It's all but impossible for us all to pay attention to what's going on in every single state, right? But we have to understand that what happens in one state has an amazing tendency, almost an unerring tendency, to bleed over into other states. See, each state is actually a laboratory, which is fine, right? Because that's the way our Constitution was created, that each one of the states was supposed to be a laboratory so that they could test out certain things, certain ideas to see if they worked. And if other states were watching and saw that these things worked in some other state, they would say, hey, well, maybe it's fine for us to implement that here. However, in order for each state to join these United States of America, there were rules, right? They had to follow certain rules in order to join. So there were, they had to obey the Constitution. That each state had to protect the inalienable rights of their citizenry. And that's why we ended up with, the Bill of Rights. And there was a lot of discussion among the founders and framers as to whether we should even have a Bill of Rights, because the question was, if we go ahead and even create a, quote, Bill of Rights, that would lead some to believe that the only rights you have are that which are listed specifically in the Constitution, right? That was a serious concern. Once again, the founders and framers were brilliant men, much wiser, much smarter than any of these weapons-grade morons that you see on Capitol Hill to this day, or within the state capitol of your state, or within the city hall of your city or municipal building of your county or area. They were much wiser than these morons, right? And so, yes, they made it a point to specifically list and protect certain rights, but then you go and they said, well, you know what? Let's just double check. Let's double down on this. And we have all these different amendments, First Amendment protecting peaceful assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, all those things. Second Amendment protecting the right to bear arms and so on and so forth. I'm not going to act like I know what each and every amendment specifically says. I have an idea, but I couldn't tell you specifically which amendment says that. But but anyway, look it up. But I do know that when they got to the 9th and 10th Amendment, the 9th Amendment, they made it clear. They're like, yo, let's just check, just in case there's some weapons grade morons like Bernie Sanders. just in case there's some evil schmucks like Elizabeth Warren, just in case there's some weapons grade morons like the notorious AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right? Just in case, let's put this other stopgap measure in place. Let's put the 9th Amendment that says, hey, moron, just because we did not specifically mention a particular right, that does not mean that right is not held by the people. That's what the 9th Amendment says. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it says. And then they're like, you know what? We need to double down again on this. So let's create the 10th Amendment. And let's say, hey, moron, any powers that are not specifically given. Well, hold on, before I go into that, so you have to understand the Constitution itself is a document that sets up and limits, that creates, but also sets limits on the federal government. Right? That's what it does. And it also says that any states who are part of these United States and any future states that might join these United States have to assure that they will protect these rights. Otherwise, you can't be part of the United States. That was the contract that was signed. So when you when your state, see, and first of all, the citizens of your state had to vote. We, the people, the individuals, had to vote to empower our state representatives, our state legislature, to petition to join the United States. See, we empower. So the Constitution actually is a contract, right, between 3 entities. 1, we, the people. 2, the states. And 3, the federal government. And it creates the federal government. It empowers. It says that the states, who were first empowered by we the people, and governments are only instituted among men for the express purpose of protecting the inalienable rights of we the people. That's the sole reason for government. It's the sole reason why we create a republican form of government, and we empower individuals, whether it's at the municipal, local municipal, state level. We empower them to protect our inalienable rights and to do things that will help to promote the general welfare. Now, general welfare doesn't mean, hey man, let's give everybody, $1,000 a month. So let's take, which first requires that you take money from everybody by force, which in and of itself violates your inalienable rights. So you can't do that. So you're doing something illegal and immoral right off the bat. So, you can't vote away your inalienable rights. That's what an inalienable right is. It's something that was given to you at the moment of your conception by your creator that no lesser power has the proper authority to deprive you of. That's what an inalienable right is. I usually say unalienable right, but so many people are used to hearing inalienable right. It's the same thing. So what you end up with is this contract called the Constitution, where we the people have empowered our states to go forth and represent us in Washington, D.C. as we create these United States, a federal government that helps to take care of things for these United States. But we set limitations. We, the people, set limitations on what these United States and the federal government could do. And we wanted to make sure that our inalienable rights were protected. So the right to peacefully assemble, the freedom of press, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the right to bear arms, the right to a free trial, a speedy trial, the right to not have the government putting troops in our home, the right to not have government take away our property. These were all things that we established, we the people established with our governments. And so, once again, the Ninth Amendment was there to say, hey, moron, just because a specific right was not listed here in the Constitution, it does not mean that the people don't have that right. And then they said, all right, well, let's go ahead and put this 10th Amendment in just to kind of make sure. And it says, hey, moron. Hey, you, moron. Every Democrat elected official, especially, but there's a bunch of morons on the right also. And it says, hey, moron. In the federal government, if we did not specifically say that the federal government had this specific power, then that specific power is retained by the states. So, what's amazing to me is, listen, I've read the Federalist Papers. I am not a scholar of the Federalist Papers. Quite frankly, it's very dense reading. But see, I'm an average citizen. I have not made the study of the law my lifelong pursuit. Right? But I do understand what the Federalist as well as anti-Federalist papers do. And what they do is they explain the whole process, the thought process that the founders and framers had as they created the Constitution. And even with the amount that I have read, it becomes very clear that when they said shall not be infringed, they meant shall not be infringed. I mean, it wasn't like, they're like, yeah, but kind of, sort of, like, no. When they said the right to bear arms shall not be infringed, they meant it. Right? I mean, it trips me out when people are like, well, the Constitution is, it's a living document. It's open to interpretation. And, we see the reason why we had a Supreme Court is because the Supreme Court is supposed to interpret the Constitution. Stop it. Stop right there. No, they're not. That is not the role of the Supreme Court. The judicial branch is not there to interpret the Constitution. The judicial branch is there to interpret the constitutionality of laws that are passed. But, if the Constitution says, see, what's funny? The problem is, it's become so apparent in modern times, right? Because like 20 years ago, like terms like transgender didn't exist. Because like if you said 20 years ago, let alone 40, 50 plus years ago, if you said, hey, man, a man can be a woman if he feels like it. People would have been like, huh, what? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, a man, it don't matter if he looks in his pants. He could be like, you know what? I know that, see, there's this penis down there in my pants, but I don't like that it's there. I don't really want to recognize it. So, you know what I'm saying? I'm a woman. And you know what would happen to that person? They're going to get locked up in a nice room with these nicely cushioned walls, and they'll be given this custom-made leather jacket with these just very fashionable long sleeves and these buckles and straps. It'll be just made for them, custom made, right? And they'll be able to wrap themselves real tight and feel all warm and cozy in their custom-made leather jacket with all its straps and buckles. That's what would happen to someone who said that just because I have a penis and just because I have XY chromosomes, that doesn't mean that I'm a man. I'm a woman if I feel like it. But see, now, as that dude Thomas Sowell always talked about, is He said, much of the social history of the past 30 years has been replacing what works with what sounds good. And you know what's always worked? A male is a male is a male is a male is a male. It's always worked like that. If you have, and long before we understood studying like chromosomes, if you had XY chromosomes, everybody, not everybody, everybody knew you were a man. And if you said, well, nah, man, but I feel, shut up, because nobody cares how you feel when we're talking. See, what's funny to me is that I am a Christian constitutional conservative, and for the longest time, the left used to accuse people like myself of being anti-science. But now these very same people with access to empirical data, right, undeniable, listen, you have a penis. That makes you a male. That's called undeniable evidence. Nah, well, see, but Chris, that makes you a bigot because, if that man feels like he has something else, then, he could be whatever he... No. Shut up. He's got a penis. That's a male. But see, we're dealing with people who are not honest brokers in any conversation. We're dealing with people who think that a male becomes a female simply by feeling like it. So is it any shock? Remember, these are the exact same people who are running around saying that the Constitution is a living document. These are the exact same people who are saying, well, see, when the Constitution says shall not be infringed, they didn't really mean shall not. You know what I'm saying? It meant kind of, sort of, when we feel like it could be infringed, we can infringe because I don't like them guns that got like the black color and the little handhold thing. Oh, the gun that could shoot more bullets at one time. Ooh, that's scary, child. That's scary to me. And so they believe that shall not be infringed is subjective. That's who we're dealing with. And they are tyrants. They're in the minority, okay? Understand that these people are in the minority. One of the things the Constitution was there for was to help protect the minority from the tyranny of the majority. But keep in mind, the minority can become tyrannical. See, the loud, shrill, very vocal left, they're in the minority. Most people realize that's just stupid, right? I mean, we can sit here and talk about things like, I was just talking to a friend about this, that I actually, first things first, I don't hate anyone because of their choice of sexual preference. Now, as a Christian constitutional conservative, I will tell you that, you will be condemned. I don't have the power to condemn you. It's my hope and prayer that you repent from that. Now, I can pass judgment upon you. I can righteously judge your actions. And if anybody tells you that a Christian cannot judge, they're stupid. Don't listen to them. They do not know what they're talking about. Especially, look, and the stupidest people on the planet are quote unquote Christians who say that you're not supposed to judge. That's someone who has not read their Bible. Don't listen to them. They do not know what they're talking about. Walk away from them. Do not let them influence your life. They're stupid, or at least ignorant. Now, the ones who are just like adamant about it, they're stupid. Walk away from them. Right? But yes, we can judge. We can't condemn. Condemnation is something that is solely the power of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And he doesn't condemn people until the end of their days. Which is why even the thief on the cross was able to find salvation. So of course it's my prayer that anyone who is living, who is caught up in the LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ lifestyle, it's my hope and prayer for them that they come to salvation. So I pray for them. But then there are the members of what I call the LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ mafia, who are the loud, shrill minority, who are pushing an agenda, who want you to believe, if you want, like, for example, I was talking to a buddy of mine about this, about like something like Netflix, and like, I love Marvel superhero stuff, right? But I had to stop watching it, not just Marvel, but DC Comics. I had to stop watching it because every episode they have found a way to push their agenda. So now you can't watch, like, every character that you have loved, they've tried to turn that person into some LGBT person. And it's just gotten flat out ridiculous. You know? I mean, you're sitting there watching some show or whatever like that, you know, like you're watching Supergirl, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, Supergirl will, like, you know, she'll be beating up a bad guy, right? And then all of a sudden she'll, you know, they'll be like, the reason why I beat that guy is because I'm a lesbian. What the? What? No, it's because you're from Krypton, and you know, the being here in the yellow sun actually gave you powers that you didn't have in your homeland planet of Krypton, and it had nothing to do with you being a lesbian. What the hell has that got to do with anything? But that's what they'll do. You know, all of a sudden, they'll take some crazy moment and throw in some LGBT, you know, agenda. You know, Batgirl will be fighting someone, and you know, they'll take someone to jail, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm fighting someone, this is a bad guy, and, you know, it's a terrible person who happens to be Hispanic, and she'll defeat this bad guy, but then she'll be like, yeah, you know, I'm defeating you, but I'm not going to take you to jail because, you know, Donald Trump is president, and if I take you to jail, then ICE will come pick you up, and you'll be deported. What the? See, that's the crap we're talking about. These are the tyrannical people in the left that we're talking about. The same people who think that a male is a female if he feels like it. The same people who think that the Constitution's a living document that can be interpreted any way that they feel is convenient. These are the people that we're talking about. And essentially, this is what all those men and women who showed up in Richmond, Virginia on Monday, they were there to take a stand against that. You have to understand that the Virginia Legislature not only is taking shots at the Second Amendment rights, they're also going after First Amendment rights in terms, specifically in terms of freedom of religion. So, and you know what? We deserve to have to deal with this because we, the members of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia, particularly those of us who are conservative, who happen to vote Republican, we deserve to have to deal with this because we neglected to take care of this at the ballot box, right? That dude, Frederick Douglass, born in 1818, died in 1895. He was born a slave who had to run away. He had to escape from freedom. He always said, he says, you know, I used to dream and wish about freedom and pray for freedom, and then I found freedom when I used my feet. He had to run away from slavery. And who are the people who held him in slavery? Democrats. The same people who want to hold people in slavery today. The same people who want to dehumanize people. Because remember, in order for them to justify keeping people in slavery, they first had to dehumanize those people. They had to say, oh, well, those Negroes, those Africans are subhuman. And since they're less than human, see, because remember, these are people who call themselves Christians. And they said that because they are less than human, then it's okay because the Bible makes it very clear that one, You're not supposed to steal your fellow man. In fact, and forgive me, I keep forgetting whether it's in Leviticus or in Exodus, but it makes stealing a man a capital crime. You're not allowed to steal a man. See, this is the founders and framers knew this when they talked about certain inalienable rights. When they said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The founders knew that. If you go and read the first draft that Thomas Jefferson wrote of the Declaration of Independence, he spoke out specifically. He gave a fairly long paragraph where he was criticizing and condemning the quote-unquote Christian king of England. He criticized him because he said, there's many of these colonies that want to outlaw slavery, but the King of England made it clear that as long as we were a colony of England, and as long as England had slavery, we had to have slavery. See, a lot of people don't know this because most of your college professors, or almost all of your college professors, and most of your high school and elementary school teachers are leftist, regressive, socialist-minded, industrial-grade morons. Yes, most of them are. They're either ignorant, sometimes they just don't know, literally, the definition of ignorant. They just don't know, or some of them have an idea, but because they're true believing leftists, they'll never tell you that truth, because it runs counter to their narrative. See, these are the things that when I started studying and I became aware of that, it's one of the reasons why I've sworn off the Democratic Party, that I wouldn't urinate on the Democratic Party if they were on fire. My bladder could be full, like I just drank a big gulp from 7-Eleven, and if the DNC was on fire, I'd be like, oh, well, that's what I feel about the DNC, because I know who they are. I know their ideology. So this is what all those Virginians and people who came from out of state were there standing in opposition to on Monday. Now, we should have done that at the ballot box. Frederick Douglass, and you thought I forgot, Frederick Douglass said that a man's rights are in three places: at the ballot box, at the jury box, or with the cartridge box. Cartridge box meaning rifle cartridge, pistol cartridge, bullets, and guns, right? He was making it clear that you first vote. The ballot box. Your vote is important. That's why part of why we have a prosperous, peaceful society is because we first utilize the ballot box. But then there's also the jury box. You know what? Sometimes you will be arrested and so on and so forth. But see, there's the presumption of innocence, and that the state actually has to prove the case that you are guilty. A person is innocent until proven guilty. That you have rights, and the state has to actually prove why your rights can be taken away. And you know what? When the state becomes destructive, when the state becomes tyrannical, the founders and framers knew that's why we had the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was not there to hunt. The founders and framers didn't say, oh yeah, well, we need we need our guns, so, brother get hungry and everything. So, I need to be able to go out there in the woods and find me a turkey so my wife can make me a turkey sandwich. No, that's not the reason. And it's just stupid for you to even imply. It's just stupid. It sounds stupid. You're stupid. It's all stupid for you to imply when you know history in its proper context. What did they just finish doing? They didn't just finish hunting to find a turkey so they could make a turkey sandwich. They weren't saying, yeah, I need a turkey BLT. That's not what they were looking for. They just finished fighting a revolutionary war. That's why they put the Second Amendment there. They knew that if they did not have the right to bear arms, there's no way that they would have been able to get their freedom, you moron. And one of the first things that the tyrannical government from the king tried to do when he felt that there were rumblings among the people, when he thought that they might become harder to control, he sent his troops to go and try to seize the storehouses of arms that the colonists had. Why? Because it's so much easier to control unarmed people. See, you have to show a much higher level of respect to someone when they're carrying arms. See, think about this. Even when it comes to the law, do you understand that a security guard is empowered, right? That guy, everybody jokes about the rent-a-cop that everybody jokes about at the mall or whatever like that. Well, guess what? That rent-a-cop is employed by the owners of that private property to be there to help preserve their private property. But what do people do? They make fun of that person. That person's got a radio, they've got a badge, uniform badge, radio, so on and so forth, right? But why do we make fun of that person? They're like, man, you old punk rent-a-cop, get out my face. But when somebody shows up and they're a police officer, seriously, what's the difference? What is the difference between the rent-a-cop and the actual police officer? Ultimately, when it all comes down to it, it's that gun. It's the threat, it's the possibility that they may bust a cap in your behind. People tend to change up their behavior when there's a possibility that you can catch a hot one dead between your eyes. You can disagree with someone vehemently, but you know what you're gonna do? When they're carrying a gun, you're gonna speak a lot more carefully to them. And that's what the founders and framers knew, that by us, we the people, having the right to bear arms, we're gonna have a conversation among equals between us and government. As opposed to when government is the only one with arms, they become bullies, they become tyrannical. And that's, see, the left is not anti-gun. The left simply wants to be the only ones having guns. The left wants to have big, huge government, with that government being the only one to have guns because they're bullies, because they're prone to tyranny. So when you start understanding these things about the left, and you understand how wicked these people are, you understand why we took a stand against them. And that's all I've got to say for now, folks. I'm just arriving at my destination. But thank you for riding with me. I hope I gave you something to think about and gave you a little bit of entertainment in the meanwhile. I've got to run. Take care. God bless.